Okay, so on number one, on our warm-up on number one, what are we being asked to do here? What is f of g of x called? What is that? A composition. We're being asked to find the composition of f of g of x. Basically, we're taking g of x and putting it into f of x. Now, what is our initial input here? Our first input? X. We're inputting x into which function? G of x, which that was already the input. So is this changing? Is g of x changing at all? No. We're taking the square root of x minus 4 and inputting it into which function now? What comes next? Your f. So we're inputting the square root of x minus 4 into f in 4x. So wherever we see an x, we're instead writing the square root of x minus 4. So this is what should have been written here. We're replacing g of x with x minus 4. Now, what happens when the square root of x minus 4 is squared? They cancel out. Why? They are inverse functions. They are opposite operations. They cancel. So I'm left with x minus 4 plus 4. What happens here? We're left with just x, right? Negative 4 plus 4 is 0. So we're left with just x. The reason I had you do this for warm-up is because today we're learning about inverses. This is exactly how you check to see if two functions are inverses of each other. If, when you take one function and you input it into another function, you get a solution of x, that means they are inverses of each other. So in this problem, f of x is the inverse of g of x, and g of x is the inverse of f of x. They are inverse functions. So that's part of what we're learning today. We already know how to do it. Part of what we're doing today. Number 2, find the transformation's domain range. It's supposed to say range. And starting point or vertex, you could kind of think of it as the vertex, but it's not. In radicals, there is no specific terminology for that point. So most people just call it the starting point of this function. What does the negative out in front do? Yeah, it's a vertical reflection. What does the 1/2 do? By? Wonderful. What does the 3 do?
Horizontal. Well, you have to flip it. So horizontal stretch.
Not
Compression.
by 1/3. The reciprocal, right? The reciprocal of 3/1 is 1/3. Now, here is where a lot of people went wrong. How much am I moving to the right actually? Not 4. Why not 4? You need to take the b value out of the h. Remember, there should be a second set of parentheses here if you have a b value. How do we take the b value out of the h, the 4? What operation is take out, do you think? Divide. So we're not actually moving 4, we're moving how much? 4/3. So this is a horizontal translation by how much? Which way? And then the 6 does what? Wonderful. Vertical translation of 6. That's a lot. Now the domain, any function, the domain is always determined by which value? The domain is determined by which value in our transformation function? The h. Remember, the h is the movement up, down, or left, right? Left, right. So if I have a function and I moved, this one specifically moved to the right 4/3, that means that my domain has now been moved to the right 4/3 as well. So my domain is all x values what? All x values bigger than or smaller than? Greater than or equal to our h value, 4/3. Remembering to change the sign. So it's not negative 4/3, it's a positive 4/3. And here, our range is always determined by which one in our transformation function? The k value. So here, what is our k value? 6. Now I moved up 6, so you would be tempted to say k is everything, I'm sorry, the range is everything bigger than 6. However, what has happened to this function? It's been reflected. It has been reflected, meaning it is no longer, and I even drew it correctly, it is no longer this function, it is now reflected vertically. So it's no longer everything bigger than 6, it's everything what? Everything less than 6. And our starting point, our initial value is what? What was our starting point? 4/3, 6. Does anyone need me to re-explain anything here? Yes.
So in order to get 4 parentheses or whatever, I just have to divide it by 3?
Yes.
Divide by 10.
Divided by the b. Because remember, if I had this, and I wanted to get the true movement left or right, you need to take the b value out of both of those terms. Now take out means divide, so 2x divided by 2 is, and then 4 divided by 2 is 2. It's just normally that isn't written as a fraction. Normally it divides nicely. But when it doesn't, it's okay to leave it as a fraction. All right?